Women Who Rock with Success is a digital media brand for professional women. Our platform offers opportunities to expand the performances of women within our media sources. Our platform include media TV, digital podcasting, and printed media. Genres for women include business and marketing, cooking, health and fitness, fashion and interior designing, sports, travel, and policy and government. Women Who Rock with Success is ready to brand your model of business and entertainment for success.
Good morning and welcome to Women Who Rock Investigates. Thank you so much for tuning in with us on today. We have a topic that we're going to be talking about. This is, of course, Black History Month. This is your host, Ms. Diane Winbush, and we're going to profile and we're going to spotlight a lot of women that have been successful. And then there are a lot of topics that we want to discuss in regards to African American as well. That is very important, that we perhaps maybe need to keep it a little rolling, in the U.S. in regards to women and their profession. So we're going to welcome our first guest to the platform. She is none other than the Global and Top 500 event planner, and she's also the CEO of LaJoy Plans. We welcome to the studio Ms. Melva LaJoy Legrand. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for that gracious introduction.
Absolutely. So our next guest we welcome to the platform. She's a global workplace inclusion. She's an equity fire starter and strategic inclusive branding communications activator. She is none other than Miss Kim Crowder. So good morning.
Hi, good morning.
And our last guest that's going to be on the panelists today, she's a business strategist and leadership speaker. We welcome Kirstyn Allen.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening.
Okay, absolutely. So we're going to get started with you, Melva, and tell us a little bit about you and about your profession of what you do, and I guess how it inspires and impacts people around the globe, because you're a global event planner, not just for the United States and Americans, but you're a global as well.
Yes, absolutely. And let me just thank you for inviting me to be here today. So again, everyone, I'm Melva LaJoy Legrand, and I have the honor and blessing of owning LaJoy Plans. We are a DC-based comprehensive events management firm. And in terms of how I got started, I am celebrating 23 years in this industry. This is my second career. My first career was in education. And I realized pretty quickly that while that is an important industry, it wasn't my authentic space. And so I shifted into events production and gradually worked my way up and started this company 16 years ago. My company is focused on servicing clients who are committed to making the world a better place. So I was very clear that when I started my business that we couldn't align ourselves with everyone because all money isn't good money. And so the clients that we work with are serving equity-focused causes, whether it's gender, whether it's juvenile justice, whether it's education, and we have the honor of doing it globally.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for that. Kim?
Yeah, also thank you for having me. I loved hearing about Melva. My background is in marketing communications, so that's where I started. I've worked throughout different industries, sports entertainment for Fortune 500, retailer, into nonprofit and government. So I've covered all the bases and moved up through corporate America into that director executive space where I was sitting in the C-suite and was particularly the only Black woman in the C-suite. And based on that, I got a real sense of how decisions are made, particularly around equity. What do processes look like, but also what do policies look like? And how do those policies directly impact the rest of employees, whether that is based on pay equity, whether that is based on who we hire and who we promote. And so in that, not only did I get to see that side of it, but I also experienced my own version of discrimination, racism, and sexism, especially in that space as a Black woman. And it impacted me tremendously. And I watched how it impacted others. And so I started doing that work in that workplace, but I also started speaking about it outside of that workplace. And from there, people started asking me to come in and work with their organizations, doing training, working with their executives. And before I knew it, I had a side hustle. And then fast forward, I left that job, went to the next job, and I was told within 6 weeks of that role, as I was being let go, it is really hard to find people of diverse backgrounds with a proper skill set. And so I knew that the workplaces could not continue to exist as they do. And I knew that the impact that it was having, particularly on women of color, those with historically ignored backgrounds, LGBTQI+, those who have disabilities, especially those of us with intersectional identities, which is everybody on this panel as being Black and women, I was very passionate about saying, no, this cannot happen. And so what my team and I do is really focus on leadership. And walk them through. I'm Six Sigma Leadership certified. I am DEI certified, walking them through what are the steps necessary, whether that be one-to-one coaching, whether that be through learning experiences, also speaking engagements and some high-level strategy. What does this look like? And then what is your role? And then how do we connect accountability to that? Because at the end of the day, equity is a business strategy, period, right? It is not an opt-in. It is not. And organizations, due to low retention rates, are continuously losing money, not being able to connect with audiences. There's a myriad of issues, but also it can be a PR crisis. We've seen that happen, right? And so that's the work that my team and I do. We sit all over the world. I am often in other countries. I know Melva also sits in other countries at times. And I do that to absorb culture, but also to make those connections. And we just absolutely are passionate about the work that we do. And am always looking to expand and broaden my understanding so that we can better support others.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for that. Kirstyn?
Yes, thank you. Thank you again for having me. I'm so excited to hear more about the other panelists as well. So I would say my career definitely started in B2B sales. So my first job out of college was working at a huge Fortune 500 tech company and getting on the phones and talking to people about laptop computers and how they can purchase them. And I was able to work my way up to the enterprise level to travel across the country, outfitting full computer labs at some of the top universities in the country. So I enjoyed that and being able to really enhance the students' experience on campus. And I just loved being able to go back to college again, if I'm quite honest. So that's kind of where my career started, but my educational background was in marketing. So I really wanted to start to bridge the gap of those two together. Most times you find people that are either strong sellers or strong marketers. And I really pride myself on being a good balance of both and think they work really well together. So within my agency, I help people create visibility to be able to not only sell products, but also position themselves as a quality candidate for roles that they may want to go after, as a solid entrepreneur that needs to be heard. Their strategies, their experience needs to be in the marketplace. So I help them become visible and marketable. In terms of the DEI space, so within the companies I've worked in, I've had the privilege of being the chair of the African American network inside of one of the tech companies that I work for. And I was actually in that position during the time of George Floyd and the incidents that happened there. And though it was a tough time, because obviously having those hard conversations, having, individual third parties come in to explain what we can do as a community within our employer or within our company to change situations like this. How can we be more vulnerable and honest with those of us who have colleagues that may not understand how situations like this affect our culture and bridging those gaps? What I really enjoyed about it was continuing to be the voice for equity within our organization. I think that, as Kim mentioned, I experienced, and a lot of the people that I worked with experienced bias within our organization. So I became the leader there and felt very passionate about bridging that gap, making sure that people have the tools. Because I think one of the things that you mentioned, Kim, when you said, there's not enough diverse talent with the skill set. Sometimes I would see people with the skill set, they just didn't know how to articulate it. So my job in terms of marketing and visibility really helps the voice to come through in the correct way to shine in the ways and skill sets that they do have to match some of these opportunities. So I like to think of myself as really that bridge, gathering information from different angles, really understanding how I can best be that liaison to helping people get the things that they want out of life. So diversity, equity, inclusion is super important to me. I've been a part of inclusive communities my whole career, and whether in leadership or as a participant, and even on my own time and some of my volunteer opportunities, I mentor HBCU students to make sure that they have the proper opportunities that I was able to get into, and so that we can change this stigma of kind of having to do twice as much work to get half. I want us to be able to get the full opportunities that are given to us or available to us.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for that. And that's the first thing that we're going to be talking about is diversity. And we're going to go to Melva. From your site, you have a diversity team, which I think is so very important, that we work with all different types of cultures, different types of ethnicities. And I think that's very, very important. I think once we kind of, minimize as to who we can work with, I think that kind of, would be causing a little conflict as well. But when we open up the door to diversity, that can open up the door also for change as well. So we want to talk about that and how that kind of, helps you to be able to blend in with your event planning around the globe.
Yeah, I want to start off by saying that I think when you talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, we also have to talk about access.
Okay.
And I am reminded that my career is a result of women, particularly Black women, who opened the window, opened the door for me. Okay. And so in honor of them and just what I believe is right, because doors were open for me, I think it's now my turn. Right. And so what I want to encourage all of us, and I think all of us do this, is the minute that you have a seat, like bring another seat to that table, open a window, open a door, because I think what happens, and I'm going to get to your question, I think what happens sometimes is we get to the table and we think we are the only ones who can be at the table.
That's right.
And I see it a lot in mature women of color, who feel so strongly that they have to hold on to their position, that they negate that we need the next generation so that our industries look as beautiful as all of us. And so for me as a leader, it was critical to me that I hire excellence, and a part of that excellence is diverse. And so what you see on my website is 2 of my employees are my former mentees. I didn't hire them because they're Black women. They are Black women, but they're excellent Black women.
Right.
And so to answer your other question about how does that help us, I think by being a representative of what we should be as an organization, we in turn hold our clients accountable. Part of our process during the kickoff meeting or the discovery meeting is to talk about journey mapping the experience for all individuals. And we always ask, who's not in the room? Okay. How are we accommodating those individuals, be it race, gender, language equity, disability, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so when we ask those questions, they can look at my own organization and realize I'm not just talking the talk. I'm not just holding them to a standard that I don't live and work in every day.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. Absolutely. So we're gonna keep that right there, that access. That is very, very important. And we're gonna go to Kim next. We're gonna talk about the access because as what Melva said is a very powerful point. When people make it to their seats, they'll put a purse in the next seat. so nobody else won't sit in that seat, whether it's,
That part.
perhaps maybe African American. It's like, okay, you've made it to this, I've made it to this point. I'm not here to help you. And that's the reason why with our former guest that we had on the show at 9 o'clock, she's a film production producer. And that's what she's doing. She's coming out trying to help other African American women to learn how to help other people. And then also to be able to learn more about the culture and diversity of it. You've got to help other people, especially if you got crossed the bridge yourself. So we want to talk about that. That's a very powerful point that Melva brought out. So Kim, if you would elaborate on that for us a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
As to why women, okay, I'm going to put it out here. They had and I'm gonna let you comment. They had the issue going on with not LeBron James, but the Kobe Bryant when he passed away, and so we had the ABC news release with not ABC, CBS. Come on, she's a journalist, Gayle King. And so that's a lot of African-American cultured women got offended about that, as well as they became offended with Oprah because they felt that Oprah and Gayle King do not support their African-American women. And so after that, then we saw the Breonna Taylor banners came up and what have you. You don't have to worry about it. I'm going to put a disclaimer on this on all of my media, but I think it's imperative that we open up the door and bring access to other African-American women, especially when we have had an opportunity to sit down ourselves. So go ahead. I didn't mean to have a problem with that.
Yeah, a couple of things. I want to address something when I said that people of diverse backgrounds don't have the proper skill set. I want to make sure that's clear that that was told to me, that is not a belief of mine. Okay. But also this conversation about who helps whom, there's a duality to it, because I will say this, I can thank Black women for my career. Okay. Truthfully, even to this day as an entrepreneur, I have a mastermind group of very powerful Black women where we open our books to each other, where we lay out our contract, where we share. I mean, literally, there's nothing I cannot ask in that group that someone will not answer. I also try to be that transparent when Black women come to me. I've had Black women send over hundreds of thousands of dollars of deals, of business deals to me. And so I want to highlight that. And the reason why is because I see this language sometimes on social media where it's like, we don't help each other. And I have not found that to be true in a totality. So then on the flip side, there is a group of folks who don't want to move folks along. And here's the thing. We often, because we are people who have been historically underrepresented, and I won't even say, you think about things like Black Wall Street, where Black people have absolutely built their own self-moving, self-successful microcosms. And then due to white rage, those things are burned down. Okay. So this idea that we cannot create community with each other, this idea that we cannot support one another it's just untrue. And we have done it. There are examples. The problem is that we are not taught those examples because we learn from history. And so that is one point, that is an issue, but also this idea of scarcity that has been created for us, right? In the workplace, there is only room for one. You hear Black actresses talk about this all the time. Viola Davis has addressed it. Angela Bassett has addressed it. It is not even our doing. It is this creation of a lack of jobs that allow us room in the space, which is why Black women are the leading group of entrepreneurs right now. Black women are actually exiting those spaces because we are not comfortable with this language. Black women tell me what they make all the time. And so, yes, that does exist. What I find beautiful, especially as we start to look at Gen Zers, is that Gen Zers are not about that life. Gen Zers are absolutely, are really, as a culture, as a group, working really hard to be inclusive. The way I listen to Gen Zers talk about other folks who are different than them is very different. The way I have been corrected by Gen Zers about the way that I even have frameworks and think about certain things has been beautiful. And so what I want to encourage is this, is that we see ourselves in duality, and that we do not allow the narrative of folks who are not like us or who have created spaces systemically so that we cannot be a part of, to lead our own viewpoints about how we think and how we engage with one another.
Okay, that's fair enough. I mean, everybody's entitled to their own opinion, but the stereotyping is there, where is what Melva had stated. I mean, everybody's different, and everybody has different experiences. There are some areas where when when certain African Americans reach it to one point, they don't save a seat for other women. It depends on, as what you were saying, what your education is, what you have been taught. Everybody may have not been able to embrace that opportunity, may not have been able to embrace that door. So that's the reason why on our media, what we do is we give opportunity. We give opportunity, and we provide it so that people will be able to understand, they will be able to network with one another, they will be able to educate themselves with other entrepreneurs. So perhaps maybe it will alleviate the stigmatism, but there are some professionals out there that will put a purse in the seat and say, no, you're Black, but you won't sit beside me, because they have crossed the bridge.
Yeah, and I think I want to make sure what I heard, the way that what I stated is clear, that there is a duality in this. And so what you're not hearing from me is a disagreement. What you are hearing from me is that there is a duality, that there are those folks and there are other folks. Right. And because we have been so stigmatized, we are often not allowed to think about ourselves in duality. It is often the either or. And so that's what I'm getting at. And yes, if we're honest, anti-Blackness exists for all of us. We have all been taught that there's not enough room or space, or that Blackness in some way is not excellent in and of itself without all of the do's, right? Without all of the things we have to do. And so I just want to make myself clear that when I talk about this, there is a duality. I'm not saying that that doesn't exist, but I also want to always say that the other side exists as well. Especially I want to honor the Black women who have poured into me and who continue to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fair enough. So Kirstyn?
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Kim, for the correction. I definitely apologize if I misspoke there, but I totally understand where you're coming from in my last statement. In terms of access, I think that one of the things that was just shared really stood out to me, and it's the changes within the new generation and how they're more open to being inclusive and sharing and things like that. I think that's really going to start to be the catalyst of, seeing changes even in the older generation. So if we have more of that positivity and have more of that inclusivity and embrace it, I think that helps to shift some of this narrative, because I do agree with you, ladies, that it's definitely a duality in it. I've experienced both sides. And I think that what kind of happens is this mindset, the scarcity mindset, that there's only going to be one space. So a part of what I am wanting to do and want to impact in my space and with my people is to create more seats. So there is opportunity, so that there's not just one C-level suite at whatever, company that you want to be in, but now there are more decision makers of color that can bring you on. I've worked in companies where just at first level management, there may have been 2 or 3 Black managers, right? There's no reason that it should be more, Black entry-level employees and only just a handful of Black leadership, even at the first line level. We need to create more access. We need to be a part of the conversation more. We need to make sure that we're highlighting our skill sets and upskilling and putting ourselves up for opportunities. One of the statistics that I'm always so shocked by is the amount of women, especially, that don't go after positions because they don't meet every single criteria or, responsibilities that are listed on the job application. But when you look at your male counterparts, they'll see 50% of it and throw their hat in the ring. So we need to shoot our shot more. We need to put ourselves out there, even if we don't feel, that we're necessarily 10,000% qualified. We need to put ourselves in those opportunities so that we're constantly being considered at the table. And I think that that's one of the things that I work to help people feel more confident with and be able to articulate and show themselves visible, so that over time, it's not now an anomaly that you see a Black person in the C-suite. We need to be at every opportunity that we can to continue to change this narrative. And I think along with the younger generation being an example for us in that we can change that, because I do agree with you, Diane. It's very disheartening to come into situations like that where, you know, a person's in the next seat. Like Melva mentioned in the beginning, if you have an opportunity, you should feel a responsibility to at least help one person get where you are. So I think that conversations like this can also shed light on it.
Right, absolutely, absolutely. And I respect everyone's comments. It's just not we working together to help one another. It's just we help diversity, we help everybody. And then for the ones that perhaps maybe do have the stigmatism and the mentality, we still can be able to help draw them as well. We don't leave anyone behind, no matter what type of income they are, because there are some people that are just starting out. I mean, when I first got started out with what I do in media and what have you, it was very, very small. There was no one to grasp, no one to help, no one to call. I had to climb it by myself. That's the reason why I brought the comment up. It's not for everybody. Some people may reach out and they may say, okay, then we'll pull you in. And then sometimes it may be, location that plays a part. Tennessee, more of where I am, is more like an agriculture tycoon, oil tycoon type of thing. So that makes a big difference, as to your geographical location as well. So it was something that I had to build by myself. So when women would come to me, African-American women would come and say, hey, look, this is all I have. And I would just go in there. You think I'm not going to have you on the show because this is all what you have? I'm going to give you the door that no one gave me. So that's my issue with that. And so I think the more that we continue to talk about these types of discussions and conversations, it will help to build women where they can become on the Fortune 500, because we never know where a person will land. They may be here today and we may have to look up to them down the road. We just never know. So that's the way I see that perception, as to helping all women, try to help them to grow as much as I can with this media that I have. Okay. So thank you once again for everybody's comment on that. We want to go inside of the workplace. All of us have had perhaps maybe a 9-to-5 job or 8-to-4 job or a job or what have you, dealing with you being the only female. I think Kim just pointed that out or what have you. And I've been in some places where I was the only African-American, but I learned from it. I did not allow this to prevent me from being with the corporation. Just because you are a person is set aside as they're the only gender or the only African-American that is there, that don't mean that you have the right to quit. That's the opportunity for you to dig your heels in to keep moving, and so we want to talk about that and share with the audience a little bit about that and how to overcome those fears if we're the only female or the only African-American individual that's in that workplace. And we're going to go back to Melva, start with her.
So I have throughout my career been the only Black person, the only female, and then quite a few years ago, the youngest. And when I think about how I persisted when I was dismissed in meetings, or when I was, I believe the term is mansplained. Is that a term? Mansplained? Am I saying that correctly?
That's it.
Or when I was told or encouraged to always keep my hair straight so I could be taken seriously, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I just share this for anyone listening so they can latch on to something. There were a couple of things that helped me. Number one, I think you have to identify who your people are, people are within the workplace. And my people, some of which looked like me and some of which did not. So anchoring yourself in your tribe is critical, in that I loved what Kim said about her space of all of these beautiful Black women who pour into each other. I think having that tribe when you want to go in the closet, or let me talk about myself, when I went in a closet and just sobbed, and someone can be your feet when you can't stand, is critical.
Right.
Number two, I think for me, I am anchored in the love of my parents. My father has since passed, but my dad, Melvin, and who I'm named after, obviously, and my mother, Joyce, were married for 54 years.
Oh, okay.
And they liked each other. I need to say that they did like each other. It wasn't just one of those things, but through their teaching, through their example, I always had an understanding of who I was, even if I fell off sometimes in whose I was.
Mhm.
And when you know who you are and whose you are, that faith, that foundation can prepare you to withstand the trying times.
Right.
Number three, I think we've got to be comfortable with advocating for ourselves. So there is a moment, and I can't remember exactly when, but early in my career, I would just take it. I would just take it because I thought that was the rent that I needed to pay to get to the next level. And then something clicked, and I realized that this isn't the way that it needs to be. And even if I was the only one speaking up for myself, sometimes I said, I'll give an example. I was in a meeting, this was early in my career, and a gentleman interrupted me and said to me, let me handle this, the mansplaining thing. And I looked at him and I said, and I was facilitating the meeting, and I said, I hear your comment, but I'm actually on the second point of this agenda. And when we get to your point, I'm going to be sure to call on you. And everybody looked shocked. How could you? How dare you? And I would do it again, because if you're already in this space, I belonged there. And so the same respect that I was giving him, despite his rudeness, is the same respect I started to expect for myself. And so what I would tell any professional is have your tribe, know whose you are, and to be clear, that is not up for negotiation for anyone, including the workplace. And at some point, that fire you feel that, and we all feel when we're mansplained or we're not seen or we're othered,
Sure.
Speak up for yourself.
Right.
Speak up for yourself. That's what I would say. That's how I persisted.
Absolutely. Kim?
Yeah, can you do me a favor? Can you repeat the question? I want to make sure that I answer the question as you asked it.
Okay, that's fine. So we're talking about diversity. We're not talking about diversity. We're talking about, in the workplace, and how, African, especially if you're the only African-American female that's in the workplace, or if you're the only female as a gender entity, how women can be able to overcome that, how they can be able to cope with that, how they need to be able to continue to move forward, even if, you just don't walk out just because you're the only female, because it may be another job that may come up, 2 or 3 months or weeks down the road, that perhaps maybe have the same structure, where you be the only female, the only African-American. We're talking about how to help other professionals as to how they can overcome that.
Yeah, I think the first part of this is to state and honor the fact that society has taught women that we do not deserve certain things. Part of that, one of the things that I love about Melva's example is Melva actually did what is counterculture, what is against culture, and felt like as a Black woman that in this space, I deserve the same amount of respect. And unfortunately, society does not teach women, especially women of color, that is our born right as human beings.
Right.
And so many of us show up to work. I was not as strong as Melva. I spoke up for myself. I probably was a little more angry in my delivery. And I took too much.
Okay.
I waited too long to walk away from places. I allowed things that were happening to infiltrate not in my self-esteem, but also my health. And so one of the things that I want to share is that nobody owes anyone abuse in order to stay in a workplace.
Right.
Period. And I want to use that. I use that language abuse on purpose.
That's
because
okay.
often, it is acute. And the reason why I use that language is because we say things like toxic that don't quite explain the experience and the ways that people are experiencing it in the workplace. And unfortunately, many of us go to work and we tolerate a certain level of discrimination just so that we can make a living. Truth of the matter. And so the ways that women, when you ask me the question about the ways that women can move this forward, it depends on what she is willing to do. Every woman does not want to stand in the gap and then go home and have to be someone's mother or, be out in the community. Everyone doesn't want to work at that level. Some people want to come into work and they want to go home. Then there's people like myself who are willing, and Melva, who are willing to have those conversations and push back in the workplace. Should everyone feel absolutely entitled to have boundaries? Yes.
Right. Yes. Absolutely.
How that sits and how we decide to whatever those boundaries are ours, right? And so I want to honor the range of ways that women can choose how we want to show up in the workplace. The biggest thing I would say is this: if you have to write it down every day, remember the value that you bring. Even if it has to be a personal reminder over and over and over. And there were moments in my career where I had to get up every morning and remind myself that I was valuable, not necessarily, every time for what I brought to the organization, but just for being who I am. And the power of the experiences of women, when we look at, what is the woman? Was she the president, or I'm sure I'm using the wrong language, in another country, who said she's leaving because of burnout. But when you think about, Melvin, what do you know what I'm talking about?
New Zealand, the prime minister that just left, and I don't want to mispronounce her name, but yes, New Zealand.
Who, when we look at how she led through COVID and how her country recovered, that is due to the ways that a woman approaches the work. And so, unfortunately, that is not always celebrated in workplaces, but then it starts to tell on workplaces when you start to look at retention rates, and when you look at promotion rates, and when you look at pay equity. It tells on you, or when you look at social media, or when you look at on the website and you see who's in leadership, it'll tell on you at some point in some way. And so what I want to express to women is that the first piece of this is, one, you decide how you want to show up in the workplace and what your boundaries are. Be real clear on those. But also, as you are looking at workplaces, even as you're thinking about accepting a role, know your values. Make sure that your values are in place and what your non-negotiables are, and be really comfortable knowing that even if that non-negotiable is not a match in that moment, it'll be a match somewhere else. Trust me, it will be available to you.
Right.
And then that third piece is have community. As Melva mentioned, have community inside and outside of the workplace. You want to be careful inside the workplace. Tabitha Brown just put out a post that said those people at work are not your friends, and you do have to be careful about that. But do have, and if you are so privileged, have a therapist, if you are so privileged, to walk you through some of those. So find whatever that means for community, however that works for you, so that you have somewhere to lean on, and that you just have some mind checks. Because sometimes you're like, am I crazy? Is this happening? Is this what it is? So that you have those mind checks when you go, hey, how am I expressing this? And what can I say in the moment? So that, or even afterwards, so that I feel whole and full about the situation, whether or not you have to bring that up later or whatever that is. And that fourth thing I would say is just to remember to breathe. You don't have to say anything in an immediate moment. Silence is a powerful tool. And if at any moment that means you pause and you gather yourself and then you say what you have to say, you have every right to do so.
Absolutely. Before we go to Kirstyn, we're going to go back to what a statement that you just made, Kim, in regards to the value. So it's very, very important, and we want women to understand this, that it is very, very important for them to know themselves that they have value, regardless if someone brings them a report saying that, we did your evaluation is poor, you're not this, you're not that. It's so we want to just touch on that just a little bit more, Kim, about that. It's very important for the woman to walk into the workplace knowing that she has the confidence and value. I think Joey Jackson, he's a CNN a legalist and what have you, and he's an attorney and what have you, and he's all over CNN, and that's what he posts just about every other Friday on his Instagram page, about knowing that yourself. Nobody shouldn't have to come and tell you that you have value. Nobody should not have to come and tell you what you have for yourself. So touch on that just one more time.
Yeah, I would say around our personal value. Listen, the truth of the matter is that sometimes someone does have to prop us up around that. Sometimes we can forget. And that is the humanity of being a person, a human being, especially when you're experiencing the opposite in a workplace. You can have a level of forgetting, which is why your community is going to be so important to sometimes tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, sis, that's not right. I remember going through that workplace that was so detrimental, and I was looking for jobs. I was looking to come out of that workplace because I had gotten to a place where mentally I was just broken in a lot of ways. And at the time, a friend of mine, because I was sort of going, well, what if I leave and it's worse? And I was sort of creating all of these scenarios of what if when I leave, it's going to be worse. And my friend said, you sound like an abused woman. In the way that you're talking, that my mind was so, there was a fear of staying and a fear of going. And so it can put you in a place of being paralyzed. And so what I want to say is, even if you don't feel valued, it doesn't make it not so.
Okay.
I like to say that. And that is why I say be active in your personal decision about reminding yourself on a regular basis, even if it's one key phrase when those things come up, to say it under your breath. Decide that I am valuable no matter what. And also remember this, in knowing your value, that somebody else may not recognize it, or somebody may recognize it and be very angry about it. Because both of those things happen. Right. And so that is that decision making. I remember walking into a workplace and a Black woman pulled me aside 2 weeks in and she said, they're not going to like you here. And I said, huh, sis? And she said, you see how confident you are, how you walk in here smiling, how you know what you're doing. They're not going to like you. And then unfortunately I said, well, what do you do? And she said, I put my head down and try to fly under the radar. And I'm from Houston, I'm from Texas. We do it big. I don't know how to do that. And so sure enough, that was the case, is that I found that people didn't like me because I was so valuable and because I was self-understood in that value. And so that, the truth of the matter is not everybody's going to get it. And for the folks, the girls that get it, and girls that don't, and find the folks that do.
Wow. Powerful statement. Okay. Kirstyn, thank you so much for that, Kim.
Yes. Well, I want to start off saying, first of all, I thank you for getting my name correct. And it's important for me to say that because for so long, especially in the workplace, people would mispronounce my name all the time and I never said anything because I was just like, they'll get it. Like, okay, I'm going to move on, again, just trying to keep my head down. I think what you just said at the end, Kim, there was me very early in my career, just like, I just want to do a good job. Like, I'm not going to ruffle any feathers or anything like that. So I've been practicing now to correct people because for all of my life, I've just kind of been someone that was just like, oh, they'll get it. And then you'll hear people say like weeks later, why did you never correct me? I'm like, oh, no, just being very timid. And that was just always my personality. So I've learned, especially my entrepreneurship journey has helped me to really solidify more of who I am and be very clear on that and have boundaries. I did not have any at all. The things that you guys were saying, not only have they happened to me, different situations in addition to those have happened to me in the workplace, whether you wear braids one day and they're like, oh, you must be going on vacation. Like, just different things like that to call you out and point you out. Oh, you got different hair today. Oh, is that extension? Just the thing, you guys know. So I think that in addition to what you guys said is so key to have those boundaries and state them. But the other piece that I want to add is not just sharing it within our communities, sharing it with the communities outside as well, so that they can have an understanding of how some of these things affect us, because they may be thinking they're giving us a compliment and it's totally not. So I think helping to kind of bridge those gaps with communities that don't look like us and speaking up with the experiences that we have and sharing with them, how that impacts us, how we would like to be addressed, so that those who actually do want to respect us in the workplace, I know that's not everyone, but those who do want to respect us and just maybe miss the mark can kind of understand what can they be doing better to be an advocate for African Americans, to be an ally to them, and to make sure that they're not, on those lists of people who were like giving the side eye to. So I think that that's super important as well, in addition to, first having that confirmation within yourself and being able to speak up. I think what you said, Melva, really stuck out to me. And I was like, those are the things I wish that I was bold enough to do when I first started my career, is be like, hey, I'm speaking, instead of being, oh, well, I'll just kind of quiet down and take my back seat. But I think kind of standing up for yourself, knowing who you are. And sometimes it takes time to get to that point. And that's why I think the mentorship and community piece is definitely valuable, especially if you're still kind of teetering on what your value is, or if you're feeling like you're in these situations where you want to speak up, but you're not sure how to appropriately do it so that you're understood, but also not seen, as combative, right? I think that's the one thing that we worry about, especially, I know for me, it's like, I don't want to seem like I am causing issues and things like that, but I don't think the two exist. When you want to advocate for yourself and have boundaries, it's not the same as being combative. It's not being angry. It's standing up for yourself, and you have that right just as the person next to you does. So sometimes we need to understand those differences and how to really speak up for ourselves in a way that's effective. So I think the community piece is clear, but I will also add to make sure that we have connections with others that don't look like us and bring them into these conversations.
Yeah. What Kirstyn said about the angry Black woman trope, because that's what we're talking about. That is a silencing tactic. That is a tool that is used so that Black women do not feel comfortable speaking out, right? That's gaslighting, and it's a bit of a dog whistle. And so I have experienced that trope being attached to my name when I start pushing back. And so that can happen. Unfortunately, in the workplace, you can be punished. It maybe is not punished on the books, but it can be punished in the culture when you speak up for yourself. And which is why I say, how you decide how you want to exist in a workplace is up to you. If you just want to get by on your way out, that you can do that, whatever works for you, works for you. And so we all get to decide what that looks like, because there are tools that are unfortunately in place in workplaces and workplace culture that don't support women standing up for themselves.
Absolutely.
Can I add something that I was just triggered in a positive way?
Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to add that I think it's important as we navigate our lives that we document our story.
Wow.
And by that, I mean the power of journaling. So it is not a secret. I am a survivor of abuse, domestic abuse, in addition to workplace abuse, financial duress, all of the things. And in addition to a wonderful therapist, a lot of prayer, what has helped me is documenting my journey in my journal, because I think sometimes we are going so fast, we're existing, we're just persisting. And by having a journal, it looks different for everyone. One of my mentees is doing it in her phone. We can remind ourselves from where we came. So
that's
to
right.
The point of value and not having those external affirmations, because I haven't always had them, you can go back to your journal and you can affirm yourself. You can say,
that's right.
I remember a time when I was broke, but wow, I remember a time where I didn't speak up, but on this day it shifted. I remembered. And so I want to encourage everyone, but particularly women and Black women, to not negate every single win. The big, the small, the in-betweens for yourself, by yourself, in your journal and reflection time, however that looks. I think that, to me, has been a tremendous life tool and a gift. So I just wanted to say that.
I love that.
Me too. Me too. I like that. That is so wonderful. And thank you so much for sharing that, Melva. We, just kind of basically, if no one is patting you, you can pick up your own journal and say, look, this is where I overcome. This is how far I have came. And that is very, 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 very important. So we're going to go to the next topic, and the next topic is going to be talking about equity in pay. Now, we know that some of the EEOC rules it used to be some years ago, when I worked in management, it was in regards to you couldn't discuss your pay or what have you, but now it has flipped that. With the human resource department, with the equal opportunity employer. So let me share a little example about that. When I first got into the retail management, and this was back in the 90s, this is not nothing recent, but back in the 90s, I didn't know what to ask for because I didn't know what my value was. I did not know. I was just going in there as a manager. And so this, like what Kim and what Melva and all of the rest of you said, Kirstyn, you have to have somebody there will be somebody to pull you to the side. And so this lady, I'll never forget her name. Her name was Anita. She said, Miss Wimbershire, don't you ever do that again. She said, anytime, she said, they probably liked you when you came through the door because you didn't ask for the pay that you deserve. You got value. She said, you don't come in here asking for stuff like this. She said, you go in there and put the pay in what it's worth. She said, you make them pay you what that job, what that management skill job requires. Don't ever take yourself down like that. And I guess I was looking at it on the fact that being African American, I'm just going to be honest about it, and think that this management was going to be able to pay it, and she just pulled me to the side. She said, don't you ever do that no more. So we want to talk about that as to how women, when they walk into, especially this can also be on both sides for you, Melva, because you're your own CEO, and also I'm pretty sure you've worked in the workplace as well. And we want to talk about that, about the equity of pay, what you are valued and what you need to be asking for. Because a lot of times people are not going to tell you, the vice president is not going to tell you, the CFO is not going to tell you. You'll have to sit there and you have to try to figure out, am I worth this amount of money? And this one, and I'm going to share this other story. This young lady, she got picked on and stuff. She went to school with my youngest son. She's about 30 now. And she went to school with him. She was a nerd and what have you. And so when she went to college and she was doing her clinicals and she was a marketing strategist. Pepsi went in there and gave her the $60,000 and she hadn't even graduated yet. This woman, she was a child, even though they went in there and, well, I look at it and she was a child. She was a grown adult, but she was just fresh out of college. Like I said, people picked on her because she was a little different than what other people expected her to be in her culture. And so this African-American lady, PepsiCo, went in there and paid this woman top dollar, $60,000. She had sense enough to go in there and put her value out there. So once she came out of the college, they hired her full time. And I'm not for sure what she's making now, but she was making $80,000 once she came out of the university. And once she completed the full college, they hired her full time. So she knew what her value was. Even though they may have called her this and that, when she was in school, she had sense enough to speak up for her worth. So we're going to start with you, Melva. We want you to be able to share on both sides of the fence as a CEO and as when your experience when you worked in the workforce.
Oh, this is a good one. So I have two stories I'll share.
Okay.
Early in my business, I was so happy to get work. I was like, oh my gosh, thank you for hiring me. And so, because this was pre-Instagram, Facebook, it was a lot of cold calls, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, after this particular project, which I felt at the time was a big deal for me, the company had a debrief, and their second point of what could have gone better was that they should have paid me more. And so the vice president called me. To be clear, they didn't pay me more, but I want to tell the story.
Oh, wow.
The vice president said that my competitor was going to charge them $100,000 more.
Oh.
So what that taught me, it was the first and last time I ever got that news, because what it taught me as a business owner is I was so focused on being thankful and grateful for the work, right, that I negated what rooms I was in. Wow. So I would say to any business owner, do your market research, understand your competitors, and then just for good measure, add an additional 10 to 20%. Because I was so of course everybody was hiring me. I was excellent. It's the competitor who is getting paid $100,000 more. So I think for my business owners, know your industry competitors and charge at that level. And here's what's going to happen. When you increase your prices, or at least in my experience, there's a little bit of a lull. And you start that feeling like, oh my gosh, should I have increased? Oh my gosh. Yes, you should have. And you wait. You wait. Now, I don't pay your bills. And I can attest that being broke and eating ramen, which is why I don't go to those restaurants, is not fun. But you wait because your people are coming. Okay. And P.S., they are paying it to other companies. So that's on the business side. When I was an employee, and that was some time ago, it was that same feeling of, I'm so lucky to get the job. And so I never counter offered. And so what I would say to, and it's been some time since I've been in the 9-to-5 workforce, I would say it is critical that you counter offer. And I don't know the right amount or the data on that, but the first offer is really, I have not seen an example, and I'm sure there's data that supports this. The first offer is just a conversation. And I think the last point I would mention is we have got to, or I encourage people to get to the point where, yes, be grateful, be thankful for revenue and employment, but don't use that as a tool to negate what you're bringing to the table. Right. Your skills, your education, your secret sauce, only you can do that. Lead with that mindset. So just as much as you want to work at this company, they want you too. So don't, am I making sense? Are y'all getting what I'm saying? Don't imbalance the scales to think I'm so lucky. No, you both are lucky, and look for that right fit that matches your value, that matches your salary expectations, and wait. That's what I would say.
Absolutely. Kind of basically what I did back in the 90s. Went in there and they, they didn't trip me up. I didn't do my research. I tripped myself up. And so, and they were paying big top dollars, but I did not know my value. So it makes very, very good sense. Kim, thank you, Melva.
Early on in my entrepreneurship career, a friend of mine, a dear friend of mine, who we have the same name, as a matter of fact, who had been in business for, I think she's been an entrepreneur for 20 years, and I'm sure she's balling. But one of the things she said is that if a company says yes quickly, your prices are too low. That they should grimace just a little bit based on their pricing. And so if for some reason, this is just an aside, if they aren't, how do I say this? If you're walking into spaces where the folks you're looking at are unwilling to pay you, you might be in the wrong space. And so as a business owner, it's really important to understand who your target audience is and that you talk to them. And that quantity does not equal quality. Will I work less and make more and have more time with my family and have more time to travel and have more resources? Yes. And so you can have 50 different clients who are your own clients who are lowballing you, or you can have 3 to 5 where you're not having to deal with a whole bunch of personalities, people who are tuned in, and people who came because of you. The number of our partners that come and basically say, look, we're not looking to work with anybody else. or the number of partners who have said, you know what, we really like you. We have some other people on the table. You are outside of scope. What can we do to come to an agreement? And then you can decide what that looks like. But I will tell you that the people who want to work with you want to work with you. And so the more that you can settle in that, and that is why also who you're in circles with and the types of conversations that you ask is so important, because you can be in a group that maybe isn't approaching business as you would. So I look for people who are on that next level and talk to them and see how they think and how they talk about money and how they think about services and that sort of thing, right? Create that space so that you not only have peers that are eye to eye, but some folks you can look up to a little bit who are willing to speak to you at that level. And so that is one of the biggest things for entrepreneurs is to create, you can create your own value, understand your return on investment, have your messaging tight so that you can communicate that exactly in the way that works for you, what you know that you can benefit an organization, and be very okay with pregnant silences. Because sometimes you may say something and you just let the room be silent, and don't you open your mouth. Leave that on them. So that is one. In the workplace, I'm going to be really honest. I did not negotiate often. I only negotiated once in an organization. And unfortunately, in that organization, the way that organization was set up is that they were unwilling to budge. I should have known something then. They were unwilling to budge, and they were looking to bring on another Black woman who was the chief financial officer. She was going to be that, and wanted to pay her so that her and I, as the two Black women in that, at that executive level, were going to be the least paid employees. Yeah. Wow. So you understand the energy of that place. And so here's the thing, just because you ask, you may not get it. You determine where your financial space is. If you need to take something for a minute, take it, but you keep looking, right? You got to pay your bills for a minute, pay your meals for a minute. And so what I want to say is you don't have to remove yourself from the target. You can say, okay, I give myself 6 months in this place, but I'm going to swing the pendulum back to X place, whatever that is. You know, we all have sort of a road to getting there right now. You know, things are a little different in this very moment, but I will say this, be okay with being comfortable that everybody's not your yes. And that's a good thing. And the more folks that you see exit as you start to really understand your value and ask for what you're worth, the better. Because you want the people who are going to be dialed in to your value and the work that you bring. Because at the end of the day, those are the folks who will not question and fight you on your value, even not only at that beginning, but also in the relationship. Because when you are having that conversation at the beginning, you are placing ground for respect throughout that relationship. And so when you come into a workplace and people know they underpaid you, they know you undervalue you, and they will treat you as such. They will test you as such. And so the benefit of coming into a place saying, no, this is who I am and this is what I can offer. And maybe if you can't do it monetarily, you can introduce me to 3 or 4 other organizations that may work with me, or you can give me a mailing list that I've been looking forward to, or I can have somebody on the pocket. You know, there are other ways to create value if you so choose to do that on monetary, but just know that you are creating the baseline for how you engage in that relationship at the onset.
Absolutely. I wanted to, and thank you so much for that, Kim. I want to touch on the mansplain right quick before we go to Kirstyn. And it was something Kirstyn had said too about how people pronounce their name. And I wanted to go back to what Melva had said about the mansplain. And so that brought me back to Judge Millian, The People Court. That's one of my favorite shows that I've watched. And so she has to correct many male guests who appear on the show, perhaps maybe because she's a Hispanic female judge, and she'll just yell it out. look, don't mansplain me. And I think when men do not take the time to syllabalize a woman's name, that is mansplaining as well. You're just gonna take it and you just go, you know, and sometimes you can just move on and what have you, because all of us, we make mistakes and what have you. Then once it comes to be a repetitive thing, you have to go in and you have to correct it. No, my name is not Dion, it's Diane. So sometimes you have to, you know, perhaps speak up. And so that's the reason why I just wanted to kind of interject with that right quick. So,
can I jump in with one more thing? Every time you ask for what you believe is your value, it gets easier the next time. You'll shake your boots that first time, but then the next time it gets a little easier, and then it becomes second nature. And then you say, okay, well, 3 people said yes to that. I need to increase by 5%. Okay, great. You know, like, so then not only will you stay in that lane, but you'll increase, knowing that every time, you know, when you get those yeses, that is part of your pricing structure, is that you're moving up. So I do want to encourage, it is okay to be afraid up front. I imagine the first time that judge did that, especially being a judge, maybe it wasn't said with the whole chest, or maybe it was said with the whole chest, but not believed in the spirit. And that's okay, because every time you do it, it gets easier and easier and easier until there is a no question about it. And again, having that community that can boost you up. You're like, hey, I'm about to send out this proposal, and your community says, press in, let's go actually add some more money to that. You know, you have that bouncing off of to make sure that you aren't walking away from the table with less than what you deserve.
Absolutely. Okay. Kirstyn?
All right, thank you. So I'm going to talk about career first. So in terms of getting pay equity with your career, I think that what everyone mentioned is totally valid. And I would suggest as well, doing your research, knowing where this position should land based on your experience level, based on, you know, you might still get on Glassdoor. I used to get on Glassdoor all the time and just look at what the pay range is for particular roles. So having that, also being open enough to talk with people. I know that money can be a sensitive topic, especially in our community, but, you know, even outside of our community, talk with people about the offers that you're getting, because sometimes you may have one idea in your head and you may say the same thing to someone else and you're like, oh, I got 50K more than that. You're like, well, why didn't I say anything? So you know, being open and sharing and driving that openness, I think in our community especially, will help us be able to understand where we should land in these spaces. So I think that helps. Also, just some very tactical advice that you can do is when you're in a negotiation situation, I think what Melva said is important. The first offer is opening the door, is the conversation. So you don't necessarily need to go back exactly with what you want. Go a little over, like we're trying to meet, you know, in the middle. So when you are in that negotiation piece, don't think about it as, yeah, I want them to say yes to exactly what I want. You want to think of this conversation again as you going back and forth and finding the middle. So I think one of the mistakes that I definitely made, because I was ready to get out of an organization and I was like super excited, I did negotiate, but I only said the amount that I really wanted. So, you know, just being okay with making this a conversation and, you know, shooting out with that 10 to 20% more, because guess what? They do have it. There are ranges for most positions, especially if you're a new hire coming into it. So just think about that piece as well. Go up a little bit more and think of it as a conversation where you're trying to find the happy medium. And then the other piece that Kim kind of opened the door to is think of it as a package. Like, the salary isn't the only way that you can get value or even at a monetary level from a position. There are bonuses, there are stock options, you know, really get yourself well versed on what the total package looks like so that if they can't meet you on the salary, where else can you get some benefits? I know that now everybody's working from home, but back when I first started my career, getting a work from home day was like, you know, something we had never thought about. So how can things like that add to your experience if they can't meet you on the monetary level? How can you be sure to have a conversation with them about a salary review in 6 months, you know, based on your performance and things like that? So think about opportunities, especially if you decide to take something that's not at your salary level. How can you get more of those additional pieces that mean something to you? If they don't mean anything to you, then don't. But some of these items we kind of leave on the table and we don't think about, and there can be things that add to your experience at the company. And then from an entrepreneur side, I think that what was shared definitely resonated with me, upping your prices and, getting comfortable with sharing that. If they say yes too quickly, you should have went up and things like that. I think from that perspective, what you should really do is, I agree, examining your competitors, but also from a marketing perspective too, you have to be comfortable in your message and what you deliver. First and foremost, I have to say that as my career of helping people to do that is sometimes it's not just about slapping a number on something. It's about really being able to articulate the value of it, because that's what sells. It's not, the features. It's not, the specific things you can provide. It's not even your long list of resumes, right? It's about what is that transformation that you can provide. Even if you do this long list of things, if it doesn't mean anything to your ideal client, they won't see the value in it. So getting very solid in what is that transformation piece that's most important. You don't have to do all these extra things to validate your 100K package, but if you got one piece of 100K transformation and you can sell that, that's all you need. So I think that in terms of pricing, we have to think about that as well, because I think oftentimes people want to stuff a whole bunch of things to show value, and you don't have to do that. Value can be in one major piece of transformation. So I wanted to add that too.
Okay, great. Ladies, it has been wonderful today. Very, very wonderful, very, very informative from every last guest that we have had on this panel. And before we allow each guest to be able to share how the audience can be able to connect with them, of course, I want to be able to share, we have our Black History digital magazine that will be coming out this month. Melva is the cover featured photo of that, and you two are also included in there with your information and your website, how the readers can be able to connect with you as well. And as I stated, I always try to save a seat, as Melva said, for the next person. And so that's how we save seats for one another. We don't hold back on the next person's success or what their accomplishments or their achievements are and what have you. When we learn how to clap for the next female or the next African American, our turn is coming too, where we can be able to escalate up the scale as well. So that's something that I also give back to all women, and so readers can be able to learn about them, and then also be able to share their information, their newsletters, their blogs, or what have you. So, it don't stop here with Women Who Rock with Success Media. It stops, it continues, not it stops, it continues with the guests in the audience connecting with our panelists. That's very, very important to me. If you're just tuning in just to listen to me, it's not gonna work. You have to connect with our audience so you can get the continued elements and nuggets that you need to be able to build. And you know what? Yeah, it's going to cost you something, because some of our guests, they may offer, free master classes or what have you. After that, that's going to run out after 7 days. You have to be able to know that things will have a price to it. So that's the reason why we bring the professionals onto our show, so you can be able to grow in your business. So I just wanted to make a statement with that. So we're going to start with Melva. She can be able to share how the readers, the listeners can be able to connect with her if she desires for them to on any websites or links that she has, and also on any books that she's published or any upcoming speaking engagement. She can do that at this time.
First, Diane, thank you for such a thoughtful dialogue, such quality conversation, and sharing some of your story, because that's not always the case. And I also have to thank Kim and Kirstyn. Hopefully I did say that correctly. Did I say it correctly? Kirstyn, because I want to say it correctly, for sharing space with me. I'm so grateful. And so the ways in which people can connect and be in fellowship with me, first, my business, we love referrals in search of the right fit, and you can find the business online at LaJoy, LaJoy plans.com. I will be releasing a masterclass for Women's History Month, so you can get more details on the site. And it's actually focused on some of my most treasured journaled prompts as a survivor, servant, and entrepreneur. And then I would love to be in community with folks on Instagram at BBE LaJoy, LaJoy, full, Be LaJoy full on Instagram. And again, thank you, ladies. It's been a real fun time. I'm grateful.
Absolutely. Kim?
You can go to kimcrowderconsulting.com. All of the social media is there. And what I really encourage folks to do is sign up for the newsletter. The newsletter is a great way not only to get information about Kim Crowder Consulting, but also tips about what this means for many of us in the workplace. LinkedIn is a place where I have over 54,000 followers and have a lot of dialogue there. So you can go to LinkedIn and find Kim Crowder. We will be releasing a podcast soon this year about the workplace and about what we need from leaders for those of us who are from historically ignored backgrounds, and ways that leaders can grow in expanding their ability to lead us, but which impacts their ability to be great leaders across the organization. And so be on the lookout for that. kimcrowderconsulting.com, sign up for the newsletter. You'll hear about the podcast. And thank you so much, Diane, for opening up this space, allowing just a little bit of discourse, allowing support as well. Melva, Kirstyn, it is a pleasure. Kirstyn, I know in another circle. Melva, it's great to meet you and look forward to keeping in touch.
Yes. Okay. Kirstyn?
All right. Thank you so much, Diane. I've enjoyed this. This has been so great. I can't wait to kind of debrief with some of my communities and just share some of the things. And I can't wait till this is out so we can share it with our communities as well, because this was a truly amazing conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed speaking with both Kim and Melva in this platform, and I look forward to definitely connecting with you all more after this. So how folks can connect with me, my website is kayallenagency.com, K-A-Y, allenagency.com, and there you'll see all the things. You'll be able to get onto our mailing list and get updates on different activities, events that we're having. I'm actually hosting my first in-person event here in Atlanta on March 11th, and it's all about B2B contracting. So if there are any listeners that are interested in that, I would definitely love to have you at the event. It's going to be amazing. And then all the other things, social media wise, you'll be able to find me, Kirstyn Allen, Facebook, and also on LinkedIn is my platform of choice right now. So you'll be able to see more updates from me and things going on there. Thank you again.
Okay, wonderful. So for the last time, your ladies have been great. You have brought everything to the table as to what is needed in the workplace, as well as your own entrepreneurship background. And that is very, very important. Continue to push, elevate other women. And that's something that was a key factor of what Kim said, is the environment, the group. That's very, very important. You can't expect anyone to push you and you're not in the right group. It's very, very important. So once again, ladies, thank you so much for being with me and hanging out with me today on Women Who Rock with Success Media. Everyone be blessed. Thank y'all.
Thank you.